Hey guys, what's up? This is Shuri from eGadgets for you, and in this video I have the Vivo V5 and the newly launched handset from Oppo, the Oppo A57. So let's dig deep into the full comparison and the performance of both these handsets. There are some similarities and some drastic dissimilarities. So let's dig deep. Now towards the right end of the screen I have the Oppo A57 and towards the left hand side of the screen I have the Vivo V5. So let me just give you a physical overview of both the handsets at first. Towards the top you will find nothing whatsoever for either of the handsets, and towards the front for the Vivo V5 you get a 20 megapixel shooter with a moonlight flash, the earpiece, the sensors, and for the Oppo A57 towards the top you find a 16 megapixel shooter, the earpiece and the sensors. Apart from that, the A57 from Oppo has a 5.2 inch of screen size, whereas the Vivo V5 has a 5.5 inch of screen size. Towards the bottom, both the handset has a home button, the back button and the multitasking button. Mind you, for both the handset, the home button is not clickable. So you can use your fingerprint sensors in both the handset right from here itself. Now mind you, both are equally responsive and pretty fast. You cannot differentiate between them while detecting the speed of the fingerprint sensors. So in terms of fingerprint sensor, both are equally great. Moving ahead, towards the left hand side of the handset for both the devices. Now for the Oppo A57 you have the volume rockers, whereas for the Vivo V5 you have the SIM tray tool over here. Again, towards the right hand side of both the handsets, for the Oppo A5 you will find the SIM tray over here and the screen lock button, whereas for the Vivo V5 you have the volume rockers and the screen lock button or the power on and off button as well. Towards the bottom of both the devices, it's somewhat similar, as you will find the speaker grills on the right end of the screen, the USB connector, the USB charger point over there, the mouthpiece and the 3.5mm jack input point are present at the back for both the handsets. Towards the back, orientations are similar because both sports a 13 megapixel shooter with LED flash, and both have their respective branding also towards the back. Both the handsets are made out of metal and it looks good. The Vivo V5 obviously has some slippery feeling towards the back, as you can see over here, but this is missing for the Oppo A57. Obviously the Vivo V5 is a tad slimmer than that of the Oppo A57, as you can find out minutely over here itself. Now from a UI perspective, in the Vivo V5, which is on the right hand of the screen, and the Oppo A57, which is on the left hand side of the screen, you will find no difference whatsoever. Both the handset does not have app drawers, so all the apps are present in the screen itself by swiping. Both did not have such bloatware also, and with the swipe down menu there is a difference. For the Vivo V5 you get the notifications panel only on swipe down menu, whereas for the Oppo A57 you get the quick toggle menus and also a horizontal scroll, doing which you will find the notifications panel in the A57 as well. For the quick menus or the quick toggle menus for Vivo V5, you have to swipe up and then you find all the gestures, also as to say that the quick toggle menus present over here. Both the handsets have some similar orientations from a settings department as well, as you will find that both has a lot of customizations to offer, if not similar things for each and everything that you want to use and you want to customize your handset with. Now moving ahead, if we go to about phone for both the devices, you will find that both has its own custom OS running. Like for the Vivo V5 you have the Fun Touch OS running on top of that, and for the Oppo A57 you have the Color OS that is running on top of that. Both runs on Android Marshmallow, which is 6.0.1. Now in the storage department, both have somewhat similar orientation, but there is a difference with the RAM. The Oppo A57 has a 3 gigs of RAM, whereas the Vivo V5 has a 4 gigs of RAM. Both have an internal memory of 32 gigs. Both has a slot for the additional micro SD card. Talking about the display, let's talk about Oppo A57 at first. It has an IPS LCD capacitive touchscreen with 16 of color. It has 5.2 inch of screen size. It supports HD display, so it has a resolution of 1280 into 720 pixels. It has 282 ppi pixel density and supports multi-touch and has a color OS 3.2. Mind you, with minimum configurations, the Oppo A57 still has a wonderful display. It's very bright, the viewing angles are just superb. Now let's talk about the display from a V5 perspective. It has a 5.5 inch of screen size. It supports HD display with a resolution of 1280 into 720 pixels. It has a pixel density of 267 ppi. It has IPS LCD capacitive touchscreen with 16 of color. It has a Corning Gorilla Glass 5 protection on top and runs on FunTouch OS of 2.6. The display and viewing angles are equally superb in the Vivo V5 as well, if not better than A57 of Oppo. Moving ahead with the specs department from our Vivo V5, it has a Mediatek Helio P10 chipset that is coupled by an octa-core processor which is clocked at 1.5 GHz on Cortex A53. It has a GPU of Mali T860MP2. So the viewing angles is always superb regarding the display perspective, and with a good chipset of Mediatek Helio P15, the performance is not the worst. In fact, it's good in the Vivo V5 as well, as because a Helio P15 is supposed to be the fastest of all the Mediatek chipset that we are used to see in other handsets as well. Now multitasking is a pure delight in this particular handset as well, because the chipset and the 4 gigs of RAM make sure of the fact that each and every experience that you do along with this particular device turns out to a great deal. And obviously all the things, settings, starting from a settings department or for gaming perspective, each and everything works out equally great. Performance was good in Vivo V5. Now talking about the Oppo A57, it has a Qualcomm Snapdragon 435 chipset which has an octa-core processor clocked at 1.4 GHz on Cortex A53. It has a GPU of Adreno 505. It has 3 gigs of RAM with 32 gigs of internal memory. Performance is not weak in this particular handset also, although difference between the Vivo V5 and the Oppo A57 is of the chipset. Although the Vivo V5 uses a Mediatek chipset, but then again I must go ahead and say that Mediatek Helio P15 is a tad better than that of the Qualcomm Snapdragon 435 chipset. So that way experience was equally great in the Oppo A57 also, if not better. But then again a slight edge is, according to my opinion, is obviously with the Vivo V5. Let's move to the battery aspect in both the devices. The Oppo A57 has a 2900 mAh battery, whereas the Vivo V5 has a 3000 mAh battery. Not much of a difference. On very high usage with a Jio SIM 4G, making calls throughout the day and also some gaming, both the handset tends to last for one working day. But with mediocre usage, you can go to 1.5 working days or 1.5 working days. But then again, having said that, both the handset does not support fast charging as well. So battery was not the greatest, I must say, in either of the handsets. Now let's talk about the camera in both the Vivo V5 and the Oppo A57. Both has a 13 megapixel shooter at the back and both has a focal aperture of f by 2.0. Both the Vivo V5 and the Oppo A57 has autofocus, LED flash, geotagging for the back camera and records 1080p at 30 frames per second. The difference lies in both the handset for the front camera. For the Vivo V5, you have a 20 megapixel shooter with a moonlight flash, whereas the Oppo A57, although it's termed as a selfie phone, has a 16 megapixel shooter at the front and not a front flash or something like that, but you have something that they are calling the front light notifications, using which this particular thing you will see that the screen lightens up and it takes the selfie that way. So let me guide you through some of the pictures that I have taken using both the handsets in similar conditions and similar atmosphere using the auto mode as well. As you can see, in artificial lighting with heavy source of light, both the objects came out bright, but then again the Vivo V5 definitely scores way better than that of the Oppo A57 with the back camera. As was evident in this particular picture also, it was shot in daylight conditions and both came out equally great. There was no difference in the picture for both the handset in this particular image whatsoever. But moving ahead, in night conditions where there was a skimp or shortage of light, you will find with the Vivo V5 there is a yellowish tint appearing in the images, whereas it's not that yellowish bit of a tint in the Oppo A57. Although I'm not saying that both did a good job, but yeah, in a way I must say that the Oppo A57 scored a tad slightly better than that of Vivo V5 in extremely low light conditions. Again, in good source of light, use of the flash also, you will find that it's brighter display of picture in the Vivo V5 compared to that of the Oppo A57. Again, it's a mediocre performance in low light conditions, but then again with artificial lighting, good use of flash, Vivo V5 can be said to be a bit decent than that of the Oppo A57. Similar for this also, it was shot in night conditions with the use of autofocus and the flash of both the handsets. You will find that yes, the focal region came out great with the handset in either of the devices, and also the flash worked to a great deal, but images could have been a lot better or brighter as we have found in other handsets sporting the same back camera as well. Let's talk about the front camera. This picture was shot in absolute darkness, and only it was shot to give you an idea of the moonlight flash that is used in Vivo V5 and the front screen illuminator that is used in Oppo A57. You will find that the quality in Vivo V5 is way better than that in Oppo A57. Here also in daylight condition, shooting was much more fun and eventful with the Vivo V5 compared to that of the Oppo A57. Scored heavily obviously the Vivo V5 with the front camera in this particular image. Same again holds for indoor conditions and nighttime shooting also. Use of the front flash or the moonlight flash as it's referred to in the Vivo V5. Pictures did come out bright and wonderful compared to that of the Oppo A57. So my view is that the front camera is definitely way better in Vivo V5 than that of the Oppo A57, but in low light conditions both the handset fail miserably. So guys, now it's all about you, whether you go for the Vivo V5 or you go for the Oppo A57. Let's very quickly take a look at the pros and cons in both the devices. For the Vivo V5, you have a fast fingerprint sensors, you have a good 4 gigs of RAM variant, you have a wonderful front camera with a moonlight flash obviously, and you have a bigger screen size of 5.5 inch of screen, and obviously a bigger pixel density in the screen display perspective. Now let us take a look at the pros for the Oppo A57. It has a Qualcomm Snapdragon chipset, 3 gigs of RAM, and obviously it has a good camera, not the best I must say, but yeah, a good for a mid-range sections handset I guess. But then again things fails heavily with the front camera. So let's take a look at the cons in both the handsets. Mind you, for the Vivo V5 they use a Mediatek chipset, although it's a Mediatek Helio P15, but it's Qualcomm Snapdragon 435 in the Oppo A57. My opinion is that the Mediatek Helio P15 is way better in terms of performance than that of the Qualcomm Snapdragon 435 chipset. So, but this varies in some scenarios, but in most of the scenarios I have found that the performance is a tad better in Vivo V5. Both have a mediocre display I must say, but both are bright. Then again, they could have done a full HD display in both the handset. So it's a bit confusing, but there is a big but, because the price of Oppo A57 it's 15,000, whereas it's 17,500 for the Vivo V5. Now mind you, with 2,500 rupees more, you are getting a bigger display, you are getting a moonlight flash and a good front camera. You get a decent back camera as well, I can add to that, but you are not getting a Qualcomm Snapdragon. So the choices are really difficult between the two handsets. Do let me know your views and your vote or your preference between the two. If you have any queries regarding the devices, feel free to ask me in the comment section below, and hope this video was helpful. If it was helpful, please don't forget to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. That'll be it guys. Bye for now.